right? Because as a child, one of the things that happened to me is I was kind of picked up in the GATE program, right? I think that's the way they identify individuals that maybe has a brain to utilize like myself.
And
Go ahead.
just can you explain to people what the GATE program is very briefly?
Yeah, gifted and talented education program. I'm under the impression that it was some kind of subtle CIA initiative to find individuals that have I guess, appropriate brains and genetics to do this kind of disassociative work or do the things that I do in a hypnagogic state.
Yeah. Now I just want to bring up something. It's going to be controversial, but it's worth bringing up.
All right, vetters. Wow. I have a great video for y'all today. So, apparently, a guy named Shane Franks, I hope I'm getting that right, went on the Engaging the Phenomena podcast with James Iandoli, who I've had on the podcast a couple times. Great guy, great interviewer. And apparently this guy is coming out, right, for the first time, saying that he was part of, I guess, the secret psionic exploitation programs is the best way to put it, right? He's a veteran and apparently has these psychic abilities amongst many other abilities, which they get into. And actually, let me let James explain a little bit more about Shane.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Engaging the Phenomenon. And today I'm very excited to have on a special guest, and that is Shane Frakes. Shane is a U.S. Air Force active wounded warrior alumni, clairvoyant investigative reporter and researcher, remote viewer, psionic explorer, and psi consultant. So welcome on, Shane.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's jump into a little bit more about what this psionic exploitation program actually is.
We're inferring to it, but let's just, what is the psionic exploitation program? Just to define it for people.
Well, here's a prime example of something that they were trying to exploit, and I think they figured out. So I believe they have technology that somehow weaponized consciousness. And what I say is, so one of the things I do remember is I'd be in a room and there would be this object. It's a round object. The only way I can describe it, it looked like a clear orb. And they would ask me to look into this thing. And what I can tell you is when I look into it, I'd see the same thing I see on the back of my eyelids. I get visions. So I think they figured out a way to take the visions that individuals such as myself get and they utilize them in some kind of technology. I mean, that's just me putting stuff together from the way I interacted with them and them asking me to do different things.
Okay, so you're getting visions like you do on the back of your eyelids. They ask you to stare at an orb. I wish you would describe that orb a little bit more. Like, what does it mean? Like a crystal ball or actually a shining light just floating in front of you, like this floating ball of energy, right? And how far away from it was it? Was anyone else around you? Did you have to wear protective equipment? Was this in the dark? Was this during the daytime? How often did they have you do this sort of experiment, right? Were other kids around? Right? Did you see other people go through that same experiment? There's so many questions. This is just off the top of my head, right? I could go on and on. Now, Shane is coming out for the first time kind of publicly. Now, he's come out on Twitter and kind of but he doesn't do interviews. In fact, I asked Shane to do an interview many, many months ago before he had ever kind of come out. I saw a few posts that he had made on Twitter and I actually asked for an interview and it, never happened. It never came to fruition. So, Shane, if you're watching this, would love to get you on, man, and talk now that you're doing interviews. So anyway, so let's let Shane explain a little bit more about some of the stuff that he was involved in.
Things that they used to do to us in these programs, right? Because as a child, one of the things that happened to me is I was kind of picked up in the GATE program, right? I think that's the way they identify individuals that maybe has a brain to utilize like myself.
And just can you explain to people what the GATE program is very briefly?
Yeah, gifted and talented education program. I'm under the impression that it was some kind of subtle CIA initiative to find individuals that have I guess, appropriate brains and genetics to do this kind of disassociative work or do the things that I do in a hypnagogic state. From the gate, what had happened is I remember being tested in all these various tests, and most people talk about it online, testing with, let's say, colors, letters, putting blocks together, things along those lines. From there, they moved me into another program, which I spent most of my time alone in. And this is the one that most people aren't aware of that I discuss. We call it MK Ultra, but it's some kind of they moved on from that program. They obviously didn't close it down. They started some kind of psionic exploitation program. And within this program, one of the things they'd have some of us kids do is they'd test our psychic abilities. They'd run different tests on us. Example, one of the tests I used to have to do, they'd sit me in a room. I'd be by myself. There'd be cards with colors and symbols on them. They'd be turned over, and I had to flip a card. And when I'd flip the card, there'd be glass in front of me, and there's someone on the other side with the table with the same cards, right? So I'd flip the card, and then they'd flip a card, and they'd try to see if we'd match. Now, I don't know what they were testing. Maybe it was precognition. Maybe it was something else, right? But it was trying to see if our cards would line up for me selecting. And it'd just be little things along those lines. I wore a lot of headphones, and I'm going to say that it's probably some kind of hemisync technology they were subjecting us to that would cause us to meditate and go into these different states. They would give it, one of the things I also remember is some kind of medication they would give us. We'd get a medicine cup, and it would be filled with this liquid, and we would drink that while we were in this place. I was being removed from school during all of this, and so one of my things right now is actively going back, and because a lot of people, they want evidence from things like this, but we have to remember, man, we were kids. If people working within these programs now can't get anything, it's going to be hard for us kids. But when we were being removed from school, there's got to be some kind of documentation. So that's what a lot of us are on the hunt for, things along those lines. And when I went back to get my documentation from my school, I was told I'm not authorized to see my school records. So I'm still kind of working on that.
All right, so he's basically saying this GATE program, which stands for Gifted and Talented Education. And, after a Google search, you find out that that's going on right now across school districts all across America. They implement them right now. It's just literally, gifted and talented. Again, that's all it is. Now, this guy's saying when he went to school, the GATE program was just an offshoot, right? Like MK Ultra. And it was an offshoot of a CIA, program to find kids in our public school systems who had these special psionic abilities. I mean, this is straight up Stranger Things, right? Montauk, that sort of thing, right? If you know what I'm talking about. I don't know. I don't know, right? But the issue is that GATE is going on right now. That's all it means, gifted and talented education. So you can have a GATE program. They're everywhere. They're all over Texas. I'm in Texas. They're all over Texas. They're in all districts right now, right? And then that program will maybe have its own special name, but it's a gifted and talented education program, right? So typically the programs aren't called actually GATE, but maybe called something else. But that's interesting, right? And, I have seen other people coming out and saying that they were a part of this program too. Again, he has no evidence of this and is looking to get those records. And, now that I think about it, I think that's why I had reached out to him initially through Twitter, is he was going to be getting some of this evidence. And when he did, he would start doing interviews. But it sounds like he still hasn't gotten this evidence for his education, right, to prove some of this. But, I mean, how do you prove some of these instances? Right? How do you prove being in labs and being told to do some of these things? Right? So, look, I highly recommend checking out this interview. I'll put a link in the description so you can check out the full interview with Shane. He explains a lot more, and they go into a lot more of his abilities and, what he went through. Here's another example.
Yeah, now I just want to bring up something. It's going to be controversial, but it's worth bringing up. What do you make of let me make this two questions actually. So first, let's start with abductions. What are your thoughts on abductions regarding the phenomenon?
I think they're real. I have no reason to think they're not. Now I'll tell you that I've had one experience. This was a while back. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. That so I woke up. And it's wild too, because it's one of the few that I have memory wise, right? And I woke up, and at the foot of my bed, I see 4 small grays, and then they're on the bed and they're trying to pull me out of the bed, and then I wake up in my bed, right? So this is the thing with me. I think abductions are very real, but for someone such as myself, I have trouble because that event seemed so real, and I do the hypnagogic state thing a lot. and I can kind of tell the difference when I can pull myself in and out, right? That event, I couldn't. So I don't know exactly what it was and how to explain it. So then I'm left, like all other individuals, trying to justify an experience that I had against with people who don't want to hear it. And that's a hard thing to do. So I do believe that abduction's a thing. If NHI is here, now I don't know why they're doing it. I couldn't begin to tell you that. But I do think they have an interest in humanity, and it just makes sense that they're doing that, right? I think Dan Sherman's book, his mom, they tinkered
Yeah.
with in his belly, right? Or in her belly, so to create him. So there's got to be something to it.
And do you think that individuals or people that experience abductions would become targeted individuals?
Yes, I do. I think that shoot, it makes me think of, Above Black, Project Preserve Destiny, right? Does the government know who's being abducted and then keeping track because there's some kind of record?
All right, so there's a few things to bring up there, right? He's saying he had an experience that he might consider some sort of an abduction style event, but can't really, there's no evidence for it, right? So it's hard to be like, well, what's going on, right? And this idea that abductions would be cataloged, that there would be a record of everyone who's been abducted, that would be crazy if that came out, right? Then everyone's checking the list. I'm on the list. Oh my God. I mean, that's kind of insane if they're keeping track of it. And I think the biggest question you have to ask, let's just assume abductions are real. Alien abductions, right? Why? Why would they do it? Why on earth, no pun intended, actually pun intended, would they do that, right? Especially if there's different species, right? And then you talk to someone like Dr. Stephen Greer. I just made a video about it yesterday, right? He claims that those abductions are humans, not non-humans, right? They're made to look like alien abductions, right? So did Shane experience 4 little government agents go in that look like grays, right? That's the issue with that theory from Dr. Greer. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Look, I think you're going to be hearing a lot more from Shane, and he's kind of backing up Jake Barber's story a little bit, that kind of thing, the psionic exploitation program, right? That's kind of the hot word for 2025 in ufology is psionics. That's the hot word right now, and to jump around and to gather around, right? This psionic. You're going to see people coming out of the woodworks claiming to have these abilities, which is great. But let's see some evidence of it, right? Let's see some telekinesis. Let's see some levitation. Let's see some evidence of these capabilities. Let's see some visions. Let's see some of this, right? I would love to see some evidence, because the idea of this is very cool for sure. But yeah, where's the evidence? I don't know. The proof, right? So anyway, again, it's a great interview. Go check it out. Engaging the Phenomena, great channel. They always do great interviews, and maybe we can get Shane on and have a great conversation as well. So anyway, link in the description. Go check it out. We'll see you guys in the next video. Remember, every day's a gift, y'all. Peace.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.